Keep that applause going for Butch Cassidy, everybody. Come on. Yes. Hey, I have to tell you, maybe the best news of all, is this a beautiful home or what? Yeah. And Scott and Pam want you to know they're giving it to Gary and Carol. Isn't that great? Awesome. Well, they don't know that. Gary has helped me so much in my faith. You know, there are differences of opinion, and we just want to thank our neighbors for inviting the Gardners to be here right now. We appreciate that. But Gary has helped me. There's tough questions about religion. You know, there's differences. For example, I'm Baptist now. Let me give you some examples. Most Jewish people do not recognize Jesus as the Messiah. Protestants do not recognize the Pope as their authority. Baptists do not recognize each other at the liquor store. There's just these differences. And we are here to recognize Gary and Carol. Are you ready to rock and roll? Yeah! Okay. We're going to be roasting Gary quite a bit. But before we do, Gary, I just want to take a moment and sort of honor you with something I've been thinking about. You know what? I can't remember. So let's go right into the roasting. And I can't think of anybody better to kick us off than the other half of this amazing comedy duo. This man, Paul, met Gary way back 50 years ago at a rodeo. No kidding. You guys are like 17 or 18 years old. Later, that friendship became the inspiration for the film Brokeback Mountain. And no, I'm teasing. Just kind of seeing how far we can push this group. I'm kidding. No. I just lost my job. Okay. No. Let me correct that. He's a straight man for Gary. And they've done cruises and they've done conferences, and most of all, they've served the Lord Jesus Christ together. Let's give a huge welcome to Paul Sailhammer.
Well, it's great to be here. I wasn't sure. I didn't know this was a roast, but that was a memorial service, and so I don't hope what I've prepared is correct. But you've given me a good line, because Gary and I haven't always agreed about things. In fact, we still fight like a little old married couple about a couple of things. And one of the things we fight about is where we actually met. We know it was 47 or 48 years ago, and Gary thinks it was at a rodeo, but I don't remember that at all. I remember meeting Gary out in Hesperia at the Teen Ranch, and I was out working there and came out with Bob Craning, and Gary was cleaning the pool, had on a pair of sky blue Speedos, and was cleaning the pool. And I still remember it vividly. And we've been great friends ever since that time. We were young bucks just out of high school, really, and in college, first year of college or so, and we were working with Youth for Christ, with people like Bob Craning and Sonny Salisbury and Larry Ballinger and people like that. And we were the next generation, and we felt like a privileged group. A couple of years later, I was driving, had moved out to the valley, and I was driving on the Ventura Freeway, and I went by the LA Zoo, and I thought, well, I wonder if Richmond actually works at the LA Zoo. He talks about it. So I stopped. In those days, you had to stop and go find a payphone, and I did, and I called the zoo, and I said, I'd like to talk to Gary Richmond. And this lady said, oh, I'm sorry, sir. Mr. Richmond is assisting on a surgery on a cheetah right now. And I was really impressed. And I thought, this guy's legitimate. He really does work at the zoo. And our lives have found each other, and we've crisscrossed over many years ever since then. Countless camps and events, Yosemite, Mount Hermon, Alaska, the Caribbean, and including the night that Gary romanced my wife at Forest Home up by Lake Mears. Maybe some of you were there that night. Carol and I were both there within sight. And we were having a campfire up at the lake on the beach, around the campfire, and it was a beautiful night, and the stars were out and the moon. It was just beautiful. And so as the campfire was ending, I was inspired, and I said, you know, if you're with that one you love, just reach over and give him a nice little kiss. And Gary, thinking Carol was right behind him, reached up and grabbed my wife by the shoulders and pulled her down like this over his head and gave her a big kiss. And Carol is looking, and I'm up front. I'm watching. It's like right here. My wife isn't here today, actually. She was otherwise engaged, but that was a great moment that I'll always remember. Probably the most frightening moment with Gary was at Forest Home. And it was a church family conference, and Gary and his great friend Dale Thompson, the animal man, went out for about 30 minutes on the trails around Forest Home, and they found 2 large rattlesnakes, and brought them in and put them on the porch there at Stagecoach Inn, if you know Forest Home, right in the center of camp. And all of these kids, of course, came around, and they had a couple of sticks, and they're controlling these snakes on the platform. And they're all like between where I am and Gary. The snakes are right down here. And I'm watching this whole thing, and I'm thinking about liability and doing funerals for these children and what it was going to be. But they did a great job, and in about 20 minutes got them back in the sack and got the snakes and took them out, I guess, and released them back into the wild again. But if you know Gary, you never know what's going to happen next. And that was a frightening moment. The most unusual moment I ever had with Gary, and I think he anticipates this, was at a spot called Donut Hole Number 3. Anybody know where Donut Hole Number 3 is? The Cranings do. It's on Route 38, just east of Mentone, starting to go up the hill towards Forest Home. There was never a Donut Hole Number 1 or 2. These people just named it Number 3, I guess, so you'd think they had a franchise or something. And we stopped there for a cup of coffee and a donut before we headed up to Forest Home. And while we're sitting there, a large truck pulled in and parked right along the highway. And we're sitting there having our donut, and out of nowhere, a huge big dog comes chasing a little dog. And they chased right through where we were, a lot of pea gravel on the ground. They chased all around and causing quite a stir. And so I said to Gary, okay, Gary, you always talk about the alpha attitude. Have you ever heard Derek talk about the alpha attitude, that humans are at the top of the food chain and we have to express our dominance? I said, this is a great time for you to demonstrate how this works. So Gary jumped up, and that big dog came running this way, and Gary went, "You! Stop!" And the dog just skidded like in a cartoon. Just, "You! Go home!" And the dog ran around the truck to cross the highway to go home, and we heard this big wham! And the dog was hit by a car. And I call that the day Father Nature died. At least in my eyes. Well, we've had a lot of joyous moments too. Probably the biggest was when Gary and Carol joined the church staff at Fullerton 25 years ago. It's hard to remember that. And we've done so many Evangelical Free Church conferences, and Gary and Carol had come up and done many conferences with us before they were on the church staff. Couples conferences and men's conferences and family weekends. And we always thought it would be great to have Gary on the staff, and we couldn't find the right place for him. We actually tried to make him the children's pastor at one time. There was an opening there, and we just tried to get him to be the children's pastor, but we just couldn't make that happen. And a few months later, the elder board decided to fund a full-time pastor for Single Parents Fellowship. And we knew exactly who we wanted. And I remember Chuck saying, "Let's get Gary." And we got a hold of him and came down, and the rest is history, right? Yeah. Friends becoming family. And Gary did such a great job. Within 6 months, he was the United States expert on single parents ministry, was speaking around the country, writing articles and being interviewed on CNN and everything, because he was the only person doing single parents ministry as well. But God in his time knew exactly what we needed. Most recently, I worked with Gary on the Evening Chapel Praise Team. And there he's a favorite speaker. He's a part of our creative planning team. One night he actually portrayed a statue of Martin Luther on Reformation Sunday with a pigeon on his head. And one day, one of my favorites was a spur of the moment. One night we were singing a hymn, And I got this sort of crazy idea, and I got up and I said, Gary, why don't you come up and sing this next verse just like Johnny Cash would sing it? And of course, Gary just jumped right into it and was right up there singing away. So there's no way to squeeze 48 years of ministry together into a few minutes, but let me conclude with the words that I wrote for Gary and Carol and put on Facebook the day that it was announced that Gary was going to be a part of the great layoff of 2011. And so I went to the Facebook page, and this is what I wrote. I'll close with these words to you two. Gary and Carol, we have ministered together as friends and colleagues one way or another for 48 years. Can that be possible? I was at your wedding when you married Carol. Sue and I watched your children grow up to call you blessed. My sons were enthralled with your animal stories at Forest Home years ago. My grandchildren are now enthralled with your animal books and are amazed that I know you personally. Chuck Swindoll used to call you one of the moonbeams on our church staff. Not always easy to hold in your hands, but worth every minute of effort that it took. Your combination of personality, background, life experience, unique Bible knowledge, ministry gifts, and a skew sense of humor is genuinely unique. Our church couldn't possibly replace you even if we did a worldwide search. We're just going to have to accept getting along without you. I'm so glad our friendship will endure and we can continue to minister together as we have in the past in many surprising places. You are deeply loved by so many in our congregation. I am thinking a lot these days about that old Joni Mitchell line, don't it always seem to go, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And we're feeling that already, Gary, and we just ask you together, right, don't be too far gone. Stay close because we love you. I love you, Carol, and love you, Gary. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. And we're so that shirt is amazing, Paul. Looks like there was an explosion in an art class at a preschool or something, but it's great to see you. Paul loves Gary a lot. You know, when the big layoffs are coming, Paul was the one who said, "Don't cut me, cut Richmond." And he's been a blessing that way. Hey, Mary Park, you've got an announcement coming up here real quick. One more hand for Mary Park, everyone.
I hate to butt in right now. You're on a roll. Thank you, Paul. That was exciting. That was wonderful. When you walked in and so many of the others walked in, Gary said, there is a whole flock of memories in this room. And we want to make sure that he remembers these things. So inside the house, there is a table in the living room, and that table has papers on it, and they would love for you to write a note to him and to Carol. So they're going to bind it and make it into another book yet for Gary Richmond. And let's see what else. Also, there's a basket out there for cards, and in case you want to contribute to his retirement. I wanted to have, since I'm up here, I want to say thank you from me. Thank you for all of our group. I came in with 4 children, divorced. It didn't look good on paper when you look at who I was, but when I came in, you said, I'll be your pastor. And I've heard you say that to so many people who walked in the door. And you've given us the ability to see that we still have value and that God can still use us. And you've ministered to our children's. You've ministered to our parents in many cases. And there's some of the kids here that are grown, and they consider you like a dad or a grandpa to them. And it's just what you've done is so far-reaching that we can't even begin to know. And the fact that Jim was saying that the Sawickis, Pam and Scott, are having this at their home really is like coming full circle, because you ministered to Pam when she came into the group, and was having marital problems, in which they have been so open to sharing their story with us. And Pam accepted Christ through the ministry, and they began counseling with you, and you still disciple Scott, and both of them have grown in the Lord and renewed their vows and have a wonderful marriage and home because God used you in their lives. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Hey, Paul mentioned Chuck Swindoll, and I'm really excited to share this with you. I got a hold of Chuck's people, and if you haven't heard of Chuck Swindoll, I'm sure everybody has, but one of the all-time great Christian communicators ever. And I just asked him to take a moment and sort of summarize Gary as a minister, as a storyteller, as a Bible teacher, as a parent, and a friend. And see what Swindoll says here. He writes, he's quite a character. So we want to thank Swindoll for sharing that. That was really phenomenal. And going way back, ministering long time with Gary, ministering to senior adults. Let's get the applause going for John Colomb.
Well, Gary, as much as I have on you, you have on me, so this will be easy. Having been roommates for many years in the modular where there is no restroom, and as we were aging, Gary and I did many walks across the parking lot together, sometimes getting stopped by people at inopportune times. And Gary, there is one confession I do have. You know that jar in your office that was just a mantelpiece? There were some moments late at night. And that wasn't lemon juice. Anyway. Gary and I, though, I remember when you and I went on a romantic cruise together, rooming together. You with your CPAP machine on for your sleep apnea right next to me. That's memorable. And Jackie and I think I shared with her just, what my nights were like, because we were separated and you and I were together. But maybe someday again we can do a trip like that with our seniors. And then there's that memorable day when the secretaries were off on their retreat and you decided to help the receptionist up there and took over the phones and basically held everyone calling in hostage, which resulted in a policy manual that's about that thick now. Basically, Richmond cannot be on the switchboard ever again because he was insulting Carter's clients and other people like that. But I do.
Give him the one line. This one lady called and said, "May I speak to Dr. Carter?" And I said, "Are you like just a little bit off today, or are you really a fruitcake?"
For real.
I really did. She says, "No, I think I'm just a little bit off, but I need to talk to him." And I said, "Could I sell you a puppy?" Anyway, I had up in front about 10 secretaries that were laughing and applauding. One of the best days of my life.
Very memorable day, Gary. And then there was a time our Care and Concern retreat got in the motorhome and headed up to Buck Buchanan's place in Northern California. And when we went out one day shooting clay pigeons, and I have this wonderful picture of Gary with a shotgun shooting, which on my camera first appeared as a clay pigeon, and then we superimposed an eagle, a bald eagle. So Richmond's blowing apart with a 12-gauge shotgun this eagle. But seriously, there's a lot of people to share here, and there are a lot of stories, Gary. But three things. One would be you're a man of distinction. Your story as a kid growing up is very, very was fundamental in making you what you are. You've never taken any normal routes in your life. You didn't go to seminary, or as we call them, cemeteries, where we died by degrees. But you went to the LA Zoo, and instead of working with people, you worked with people and animals, which was wonderful preparation for working with sheep. such as all of us work with. And you've brought some major color to our lives with those distinctions. You've loved older people. They knew that, and they loved you. They still love you, and now you are one. So, so stick around here, my friend. Distinction would be number one. Number two would be conviction. And we will never forget, will we, Selhammer, that momentous day when we got into a discussion in staff meeting about divorce, and Gary raised his voice on behalf of our people, and we realized there goes lunch. It was we were supposed to have an all-staff lunch, and I think, was it you who said there goes lunch, or was it Craning said there goes lunch, and we worked through that issue, but you kept those things on the table for us. You kept reminding us that it wasn't always just simple answers for some of these major issues that we needed to face. So you're a man of conviction, Gary, and you've always stood up for your beliefs, sometimes at your own peril, but to our advantage, because you've made us think and reevaluate. And the last is affection. Your love for people comes through loud and clear. You are a lover of sheep and a lover of people, and they know it. And just by this turnout here, we love you for who you are and what you've meant to us over the years, and what you mean to us now, and what you'll mean to us in the future. God bless you, my friend. We love you.
Thank you, John. Well, one of the all-time great children's ministers and one of Gary's all-time greatest friends, join me in welcoming, as we toast and roast Gary, Sue Hannaford. I think her top alone deserves a round of applause. Come on, she's incredible.
Thank you, Gary. It's good to be counted as a friend. I've been at the church, it was 19 years in July, coming up on 20, and I hadn't been there very long when I got to meet Gary. And the next year he said, you know, we used to do this thing called a nature camp up at Forest Home. Would you be interested in working with me on it? And that began 18 years of doing something special for our kids at Easter time. And we went to Forest Home for a number of years. And then that got a little expensive, so we started what we called the 12-hour adventure. And we would take many of the kids, your kids, and go to different places, but always where there were animals, so Gary could tell all of his great zoo stories. And the kids loved it, you can imagine that. But there's one time that stands out. We had gone down to San Diego to the zoo. And we had rented a bus. It was a school bus. It wasn't one of our church buses, but we had rented the bus, and we had a driver that didn't feel comfortable driving over 50 miles an hour. Well, you know how long it takes to get to the San Diego Zoo, and then coming back, you know, it was the same thing, and we were just going so slow. And I had figured we'd stopped and had a picnic along the way coming home, and then I figured the kids are going to need a bathroom break. We'll stop at Corona Del Mar, and I had gotten Hans and Ina Blederman, some of you know them, and they were there. They were all set so that they could have the fires going, and we were going to stop and have s'mores, and the kids could go to the bathroom, and it would be fine. Well, we followed that bus until it seemed like we were never going to get there. And Gary said, we got to pull out. We got to get going. So told the driver, you know, when you get into town, here's what you do. And we went on ahead. And it was a beautiful night, full moon. The fires were going, and we waited, and we waited, and we waited. Found out that the driver got lost, and she pulled into a 7-Eleven to get directions. Well, then somebody had to go to the bathroom, of course. And so one by one, they went into this bathroom. It was just unisex, one person at a time. And the kids never made it. But we had a good time. We had a couple kids with us, and I said, well, shoot, we've come this far, we're going to have a hot dog. And Ina, I was apologetic. She said, I can't remember the last time I've had Hans at the beach with the full moon, so it's okay. But Gary was a great sport, and we got back, and I tried to hide from all the parents, but Gary was great. But we've had some wonderful memories, Gary, and working with you and serving with you. about this time of year, some of my relatives came out from Green Bay, Wisconsin, and had two boys who are not churched at all, but they wanted to see animals, and so Gary was gracious to go along with them, and they wrote back afterwards, and they've talked about it since then, that the high point of their trip wasn't Disneyland, it wasn't the beach, it was going to the zoo with Gary. And Gary, you've been wonderful to work with. Talking about dogs, somebody mentioned dogs. You know, my staff gave me a puppy a year or so ago, and I loved little Bella, but I just couldn't do it. I was running home at noon and running home at night and coming back later, and Gary had met her and said, if you ever want to get rid of Bella, let me know. And so one day I said, Gary, you really mean it. So he has Bella, so I know we will always keep in touch, because she's my favorite dog and you're my favorite person. Thank you.
I think we should all say, "Aww." That was beautiful. Thank you, Sue. That was really nice.
Bella was hit by a truck last week.
There's so many beautiful animals that have lost their lives because of Gary. It's been tragic, but Gary has taught me so much about animals, like, what do you call a dog with no front legs? Scooter. There's just different things you can learn from him. And when I looked at Facebook and all the pictures that Carol has posted of this man, incredible. I mean, the different costumes, the different outfits, seeing him as a Bible teacher, and when I see the kind of impact he's had and how he's done it, I want to go up to the leadership of the church and just ask him straight up, why didn't you make this decision sooner? You've been hearing about Forest Home. You're about to see the man who named Gary Father Nature. He's known him going back 17 years. He was the one-time interim pastor at EV Free. Put your hands together for Bob Craning. Gary just corrected me. 50 years he's known this guy. 75.
Well, I'm surprised. Nobody said you're going to say anything, but I'm just thrilled. I have known Gary forever. Some of my greatest memories were those very, very early days in the desert. And I remember being in that little church where we met, and then we slept in a wagon train. And I remember times when Gary would come up and say, I want to do that. I want to do what you do. And we've had a friendship through the years and being in ministry at all different levels. I remember when Gary went to Colorado and got into a camp over there that turned out to be absolutely disastrous. And not because of him. I mean, he's got into a huge mess. And I got a call about it. And I remember calling him and saying, where are you going when you leave Colorado? And he said, I have no idea. And I said, well, why don't you come to Forest Home and spend the summer and be Father Nature and do our nature walks. And that started something that went on for how many years, Gary?
Well, I'm 32 consecutive of doing nature walks.
Yeah, 32 years. He came every week at family camp and would take our people on a nature walk. And you always wonder about Gary. I've always wondered, he'll tell you a story about, you'll see something and he'll tell you this incredible story, and I'm thinking, is that really true? I mean, does he really know that? I remember one day we walked up on the porch at the church, and there was a little hummingbird on a nest, and we stood there at the rail looking at this little tiny hummingbird, and he just very casually said, you know, before she nests next year, she'll go to South America and back. And he walked away. He just left. And I'm trying to ask this little bird, are you really going to South America? I mean, I'm kind of in my mind, you know, they're this big and they run their wings at an incredible speed, and she's going, and they really do. They really go to South America. You're sure? Okay. Well, Gary has great zoo stories and great communication skills. I've always enjoyed him a lot. And I don't know of anybody that can say something really nice and then scream and scare everybody half to death in a really serious meeting. But Gary has that ability, and I used to get to see him at the zoo, and then, of course, when I came from Forest Home, I was at Forest Home for 23 years, and then got hired by Swindoll and Sailhammer. I came down, and Gary was there. So we've had a lot of years together, 12 years together at the church, which has really been fun and good and right. And all things change. And I said to Gary the other day, you know, I've discovered that there is life after the church. And I was there 12 years and have gone on and done other things, and it's good. But Gary and Carol, you are great folks. The other little story is, I said to Gary one day, I'd like to have a monkey. And I was looking at a macaque. No, what are they called? They're pretty. Yeah, a macaque. I said, I really like macaques. He said, well, you know, if you get a macaque, he said, all monkeys, when they're around people like that, they kind of go goofy. And he said, that macaque will bite you. And when that macaque bites you, it'll be 12, 15 stitches just to close up what that macaque does. I said, well, that's not good. I said, what else? He said, let me get you a monkey. And Gary got us a squirrel monkey that was absolutely as much fun as anything I've ever had. That little monkey was just an absolute delight. She would hear my car come in the driveway at home, and she'd start screaming in her cage. She'd just start screaming because Daddy was home, and I'd get her and take her outside, and she'd sit on my knee. I'd put my knee up, she'd sit on my knee and look for stuff in the grass. Then she'd jump down and get it, and feed on it, and eat it, and jump back up on my knee. And but that monkey, we had our neighbors keep it while we went on vacation, and it died. And I called Gary and I said, Gary, my monkey died. And are you still playing the organ? No, I just said my monkey died. And Gary said, and I'll never forget this, Gary said, well, you know, she probably died of a broken heart. He said they get attached to people, and when we had these neighbors keep her, she died. And I thought on that note I would finish. Because we had kind of a funeral thing, and we buried our monkey. But she was a wonderful little monkey, and we had a lot of fun. And Gary, you've been a delight and a wonderful friend, and you and Carol have been good friends to me for an awful lot of years. And I trust that that won't leave simply because you're not at Fullerton anymore, as I am not either. So we'll just meet halfway in between. So that's good. God bless.
Bob Craney, that was great. Hey, raise your hand if you can clearly remember something at a really critical time that Gary has said to you. Great. Raise your hand if you even know Gary at all. About the same people. That's great. Well, I went through a really, really rough separation and divorce, and very broken up. And I went to Gary, and I'll never forget what he said to me. I said, I don't know what to do. I was president of this family entertainment company. I had been on staff at a church, and I just felt ashamed and embarrassed. And I said, Gary, what should I do? And he said, I don't know, let's eat. And that was so helpful to me. Well, somebody else who has amazing words of wisdom and a heart of gold and has been ministering with Gary for 25 and 3/4 years. Did I get that right, Gary? He's like a 7-year-old. I'm 7.5. You know, 25 and 3/4 years at the church. We love him. Doug, hey, come on up, Doug. Good.
Oh, I wish I had half of the comedic genes that these guys do, but I am not a comedian. I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. But I just want to say 3 things to you, Gary, and to all of you who are listening in. You have been, in addition to their youth pastors, my kids' favorite pastor at EV Free. You have invested in them, and through these nature times and children's ministry, through storytelling, and the last one was when my daughter was in charge of the horse program at Forest Home. Gary, she was excellent with horses. She was a horse whisperer. I mean, she was running the whole deal. but she didn't know anything about the canyon, and she was taking people on tours, and Gary spent the time to coach her and train her and work with her. And so not only your zoo stories and your animal stories, you're amazing how you can pull moral stories out of cheetahs and monkeys and rabbits and scorpions. And I don't know how you do it. And like Craney, I wonder if half of them are true. But my kids loved you because they believed them, Gary. They really did. The second thing, Gary, is you amaze me at the way you allow yourself to become the laughing stock of the staff by being placed in skits where you are the funny man. And I don't think I can ever forget the last one. I think it was at Sue Hannaford's farewell. We were doing something, and you were a doctor. You had doctor's scrubs on. Oh, it was at Dave Carter's 20th. Gary had this set of scrubs that he had not tried on for 10 years. So we're in the back of the chapel, and Gary is putting these things on, and I am seeing more bulges and more lumps and more things that should not be exposed, but we are about ready to go on, and Gary goes on and makes the absolute most of it. And I'm like, Gary, you're amazing at your ability to just say, okay, I'm going to take one for the team, and we're going to have a good time, and you're absolutely memorable. But Gary, I think of all the pastors on our staff, you're more like Jesus Christ than the rest of us in this dimension. When Jesus is described as being the person who is there for the downtrodden and the sheep without a shepherd and the poor and the needy, Gary, you have been, as the song says, the defender of the weak, the one that's there for those in need, like no other pastor on our staff. And those of you in SPF and that have gone through the absolute despair and heartbreak of divorce, Gary is your best defender. He is your best advocate. And I think you need to give him a hand for that. He's taught me and the rest of the staff so much about your lives and your realities, and helped us to have a heart of compassion and understanding. And Gary, your legacy is going to live on through your people and through what you've taught the rest of us. So one last thing, Gary, I absolutely admire the way that you are taking this layoff news. Gary and I went out for lunch shortly after he got the bad news, and you know, he's a gentleman, and he's a man that trusts God, and he has, and we've met a few times since then, he has taken this as well as I think anybody can take it, and trusting the Lord and saying, you know what, this isn't the end of life, this is a time of transition. And I see Gary grieving over leaving you and leaving us, but I see him getting a new vision for what God's going to do with him. And I just go, that is just absolutely amazing, and that's a huge testimony to your trust in God, who's got you right in his hand, Gary. And you're a model for me and for the rest of us here. So Gary, we love you. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Doug. That was beautiful. It really was. Gary, I know everyone here who's sat under Gary's teaching. I have never known someone who could take the Bible, 2,000-year-old text, and totally make it about himself. It's incredible, that gift that he has. And, to take it and make it, to twist it for his own personal gain. It's a gift that he has, and I want to celebrate that with you, Gary. We have an unbelievable special treat because I think you know Gary's politics. I think you know that he votes left whenever he can. Join me in welcoming to this celebration President Barack Obama.
Keep it going for Adam Christie. Let's go. I know. I can't believe it's me either. When I got the phone call to come and say a few words about Gary, I asked my secretary, is there anything else I can do? This man is a one-man wrecking crew. I just want to say it is an honor. He is one of the few conservative evangelical men that I know that openly dresses like a woman. This man fears no problem. What many of you do not know is that Gary is a part of my cabinet. Secret. He is a top economic advisor. When I became president, I immediately put together the best economic team I knew. Warren Buffett was on that team, but he quit. He quit because Gary kept asking him to sing Margaritaville. Way to go, Gary. Way to go. Now, Gary, I want to say something to you today. Don't worry about this economy. It's my job. And I'm not worried about it. One thing I know that we must do is we must reinvest in our nation's infrastructure. We have to rebuild our roads and our bridges so the American people will have a place to live under. And jump up. Some of you are sitting there and asking, well, President Obama, how are we going to pay for all this? Let me be clear. We will print money until we run out of paper. Because I have faith in the American people. We are the hardest working people on the globe. You know those little tags that say made in China? We make those. Now I want to just turn the stage over to a dear friend of Gary's, not mine. One of the most familiar Christian voices on the radio for the last few decades. Please welcome Dr. James Dobson. Right here, Dr.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I tell you, Gary, what a shame. What a shame. I want everybody here today to know that this man was inspiration for my book, What Wives Wish Their Husbands Knew About Women. But Gary, this is not a time to celebrate. You don't know it, but this is an intervention. You need to come through with the truth, Gary. Come on. Now stop it. He has never once for a moment worked at any dadgum zoo. Stop making up stories about surgeries on cheetahs or dominion on dogs. And now you got people complaining and comparing you to Jesus. It's wrong. You know, knock it off. I remember a story that Billy Graham told me. In fact, I think I'll let Dr. Billy Graham tell you himself. Ladies and gentlemen, Billy Graham, right here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. As my eye looks out over this crowd, I want thousands of you to come forward in this 100-seating area. I'll never forget the very first time I met Darrell Richmond. It was at a crusade. and I saw him from far, far away come running down the stairs, pushing people out of the way. And I thought in my heart, this young man wants to be born again. And he ran right up to me and I said, do you want to know Jesus? He said, no, I want to know where's the bathroom. Now Jerry Falwell has a quick word from heaven. Jerry Falwell.
Well, I just want to say I've already heard it's true. Gary, God has you in the palm of his hand. Amen. And he's about to flick you a country mile. Now, in the interest of political partisanship, we've heard from a liberal, and now it's time to hear from a conservative. Please welcome George W. Bush.
Let me just wrap this. First, I want to say it is an honor to be here. It is, Gary. It is. And third, I apologize for forgetting my second point. There's not much I can say about Gary because I don't know him. But I do know that there's hope. In the words of Sigmund Freud, I have a dream. It's about my mother. But I think times like these we need inspiration. And I think back to some of the closing years of my presidency. I went over to China to, I was over in China. And I was out on tour of the Chinese countryside. And I saw my moment of inspiration, of pushing for democracy and freedom for all people. Right there. Right there among the rolling hills of China, for as far as the eye could see. And I said to the Chinese premier, Mr. Chinese Premier, tear down this wall. God bless you. God bless you, Gary. Thank you. Thank you.
Give it up for Steve Bridges. Who would like to follow that? That was so great. Well, there is a gentleman who's also been a dear friend of Gary's for 25 3/4 years as well. And I heard a story, maybe these guys can elaborate on it, where they flew to Chuck Swindoll's installation as the new, what is he really? You know, his involvement with Scientology and all of that. But what they did is they had this agreement on the airplane that they would be completely transparent with each other, am I right? And just honestly and openly answer any question about the other guy's life. I want to hear more about this. But you're going to hear from the man. He's now at Mariners Church, and he's just driven that ministry right into the ground. Let's have a big welcome to Eric Hurd.
I didn't even know I was going to be here today. This is absolutely amazing, and I do got to tell you that story. I do gotta. I don't have to, but I'm gonna. But I seriously, I actually, do you remember when I met you? We probably won't disagree on this. 36 years ago, I was in Laguna Beach. I was a youth pastor, and Dave Hopkins at the ranch asked me to come up and work at the ranch. So I end up there, and Gary's family is singing in front of these junior hires. I thought they were the Van Trapp family. It was awesome, and you had lederhosen. It was beautiful, and but that's actually when I met Gary, and we've had a lot of great times together. But the thing that Adam was talking about was, I'm not afraid of asking a question, but Gary and I had a lot of time on the plane, so we're thinking, okay, what are we going to do to spend the time? And we can either...
We're ready!
They're all smiling.
You doing a video? I didn't do a video. Okay, are we done?
Okay, are we done? I think we're done.
Okay.
You call in, let me know. I want to make sure I get it on video.
Kind of makes your tripod look a little wimpy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My speakers. You know that? Chris.
Whoa.
Too bad I couldn't get down.
Wow, it opens up.
Scotty, look at Ron. Scotty. Who's that guy?
Hey, you got some competition, Vern.
Just to the right.
Okay.
Right before the door.
Okay, I'll find it, I think.